Imagine a loved one has a chronic disease. They visit their doctor who tells them they need to take their meds on time every day, improve their eating habits, and exercise for at least 30 minutes every day. But each month they come back slowly getting worse and worse. When the doctor asks if they're exercising, taking their meds, and eating well, they say they tried, but it was too hard. They just need more medication. The doctor gives them a low dose and tells them to keep working. The next month, they come in with no improvement and haven't worked on their routine. But they ask for more medication, so the doctor gives them a slightly higher dose. The next time they come in, they inform the physician that they haven't been able to go to work because of this disease. She gives them a more expensive drug and admits them to the hospital to have tests done. This person is a type 2 diabetic. Imagine the same scenario. A person goes to the doctor complaining of pain. They're told to exercise and improve their habits. The next time they come back, they haven't been exercising, but they're given a higher dose of medication and told to work on achieving a healthier lifestyle. They come back and without fail have gotten worse. They are fired from their job, kicked out of their house, and last week they were begging for change on the street corner as people scurried past pretending not to hear them. This is not some strange twisted fairy tale. This is true for hundreds of thousands of Americans today. The person I described is a heroin addict, and 1 out of 2 opioid addicts in the United States today started their journey with a legitimately prescribed drug for a legitimate medical condition. 1 in 20 people in the US have type 2 diabetes. We facilitate type 2 diabetics, giving them extensive and expensive care, although in almost every case, their disease could be avoided or improved simply by eating better and exercising more. Type 2 diabetics are facilitated and shown grace in light of the fact that sugar and unhealthy eating are considered an innocent sort of indulgence that no one can resist. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against type 2 diabetics. Those who take opioids, heroin being the most common example, are physiologically addicted to a substance that is far more difficult to resist once tried, and yet we scorn them. There is a negative stigma towards people addicted to opioids that is simply hypocritical. The opioid epidemic is an issue that has impacted nearly 750,000 people in the last 20 years. Nearly 50% of people stricken by opioid addiction started taking opioids because they were prescribed by a doctor. If we're willing to spend copious amounts of money to help diabetics, why aren't we willing to allocate more money to help addicts recover? Now picture your family physician getting ready for the day. I'm sure she's not thinking, let's get some kids hooked on heroin today. With 8 to 12 years of medical training, doctors understand the risks involved with opioids, but they also see the benefit opioids have for pain relief. Yet opioids are still prescribed left and right. Most of the time, they're prescribed with good intentions. They're prescribed to help treat people's pain and to avoid suffering. Thousands of people each year are prescribed opioids, and to an uneducated patient, opioids may sound like a great idea if you think you might be in pain after surgery or are currently in pain. If we went home and opened our medicine cabinets, how many of us would find an old bottle of prescription opioids in our cabinet? It's not just the person with the prescription who's at risk, but every person in their home. Nearly 65% of heroin addicts say they got their first high from a prescription opioid. Addiction is a disease that takes hold of your whole life. This disease changes people and it doesn't discriminate. It drives many people to steal from their friends and family, and in many unfortunate cases, it can lead to homelessness. Many opioid addicts admit to stealing prescriptions from their friends and family when their own prescriptions have run out. Having an opioid addiction comes with a negative stigma that can drive families apart. If a relative of yours got addicted to opioids and began stealing your money, how would you react? Admittedly, not each and every person who takes an opioid pill becomes an addict, but every person increases their chances tremendously. It's not a matter of strength of character or having self-discipline. According to a study done at Johns Hopkins, the increased chances of addiction for some people rather than others show that genetic variances and pleasurable effects are just 2 of the many reasons someone may become addicted to opioids. Addiction is a terrible disease that can lead to destructive decision-making and dependence. The heroin addict living on the streets has a family. They had a life, but that was all taken away after they got their first high. Have you ever wondered how in the world this happened? No one expects to go to the physician and get a prescription for a pan of brownies or a bag of lollipops. But many people go in expecting Oxycontin or Percocet, some very commonly prescribed opioids. With 47,000 Americans overdosing on opioids each year, the latter seems to be far more dangerous. Pharmaceutical companies that manufacture opioids, like Purdue Pharma and INSEE, are at the root of the opioid epidemic. They have made false claims about the synthetic opioids that they produce. Purdue and INSEE marketed their drugs with claims that they have little to no addictive properties. Even after opioids like OxyContin were on the market and addiction to these drugs began, Purdue continued to market with false claims. Purdue also incentivized doctors and pharmacists to sell their drug. Purdue and other companies alike hired untrained reps to talk to doctors and incentivize them. According to a study done by PBS, companies like INSEE targeted doctors that were struggling, who then targeted minorities and didn't educate them about the risks of taking the drug. Purdue would pay pharmacists to fill prescriptions no one else would fill. These actions impacted thousands of lives, including those of other doctors and healthcare providers. Pharmaceutical companies like Purdue should be held responsible. The company has been involved in many lawsuits and ended up filing for bankruptcy in 2019, but the Sackler family walked away with their hands wiped clean. Recently, according to the New York Times, the Sackler family submitted their bankruptcy restructuring plan. In this plan, the Sackler family agreed to give up control of the company. This new company will transfer all of its revenue to help abate the opioid epidemic. This plan will end the thousands of lawsuits and hopefully start an exponential decline in the amount of opioid overdoses when it's hopefully passed by the company's creditors. In order to solve the problem, the money needs to be taken away from the rich who are reaping the benefits of this epidemic. With this plan, the Sackler family is expected to pay nearly $4 billion of their own fortune to help families, states, and other organizations. It is incredibly encouraging to see that addicts and families affected by Purdue are getting justice and help. There are many organizations working to help addicts recover. Safe houses are an extremely controversial example that is doing good where they're accepted. Safe houses are a place where addicts can go to use drugs in a safe space. These safe houses have reduced deadly overdoses greatly. Cash incentives are also being put into place to get prescriptions out of people's medicine cabinets. Hospitals are also hiring recovering addicts to be on call in the ER. These recovering addicts help other addicts make the choice to change their lives and get help. In 2019, 47,000 people died from opioid overdoses. Companies need to be held accountable and addicts need support. Change is possible. Advertising should be regulated and doctors need to educate their patients about the risks of opioids, only prescribing them as a last possible choice. Without education and control, prescribing opioids is like giving a child a match without telling them it could start a fire.